Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of LastCastOutdoors. In today's video, we are going to be comparing 5 popular fluorocarbon lines to see which one's the best for trout fishing. Let's hurry and look at each fluorocarbon line. The Yo-Zuri TopKnot, Berkley Vanish, P-Line Fluorocarbon, Sunline Super FC Sniper, and Berkley Trilene. So first we're going to be looking at each fluorocarbon line and comparing them and seeing which one does the best and the worst in each category. After that, we're going to be doing a real world testing and we will be grading them and seeing which ones did the best and which ones did the worst. And at the end of the video, I will give you some recommendations to hopefully help you pick one that's right for you. Before we start the video, I just want to clarify that I am not sponsored. None of these brands sent these out to me for free. All of the prices are going to be based off Tackle Warehouse. They were the one place where I could find all of the fluorocarbon lines in this video, and they were all in stock and were able to ship to my house. And just a little tip, fishing line is a very competitive market, so definitely shop around at your nearest store or online store to find the best prices near you. And all of the lines we're going to be comparing and testing are going to be 6-pound test, which is a very common line in trout fishing. Let's look at each fluorocarbon line and then compare them to each other and see which ones are the best and the worst in each category. The first fluorocarbon is the Yo-Zuri TopKnot. Comes in at 200 yards at $14.99. Your yard per cost is going to be 7 cents. The diameter is 0.205 millimeters and is made in Japan. Next is the Berkley Vanish at 250 yards at $15.99. Your cost per yard is 6 cents. The diameter is 0.22 millimeters and is made in the USA. Next is P-Line Fluorocarbon at 250 yards at $17.99. Your cost per yard is 7 cents. The diameter is 0.21 millimeters and is made in Japan. Next is Sunline Super FC Sniper at 200 yards at $22.99. Your cost per yard is 11 cents. The diameter is 205 millimeters and is made in Japan. The last fluorocarbon is the Berkley Trilene at 200 yards at $24.99. Your cost per yard is 12 cents. The diameter is 0.25 millimeters and is made in the USA. Comparing the fluorocarbon lines, we see that the Berkley Vanish and the P-Line Fluorocarbon come in at 250 yards compared to the Yo-Zuri, Sunline, and Berkley Trilene at 200 yards. The lowest price is the Yo-Zuri at $14.99. The highest cost is the Berkley Trilene at $24.99. Comparing cost per yard, we see that the Berkley Vanish is the lowest cost at 6 cents per yard thanks to its 250 yards. The Berkley Trilene is the highest at 12 cents per yard. And last, comparing the diameters, we see that the Yo-Zuri and the Sunline are the thinnest at 0.205 millimeters. The Berkley Trilene is the thickest at 0.25 millimeters. I would say the biggest takeaway is that the line made in Japan is a lot thinner compared to the line made in the USA. If we compare the Berkley Vanish and the Berkley Trilene to the thinnest line, we see that the Berkley Vanish is 2.4% thicker than the thinnest line, and the Berkley Trilene is 22% thicker than the thinnest line. So that is a very interesting takeaway from this comparison. Now it's time to do some real world testing. First, we're going to be starting off with the casting test, and we're going to be looking at the positive and negative qualities of each line. And for this test, we're going to be using a light Syncroy rod and a Daiwa 1000 reel. And we're going to be using a heavyweight spinner for casting. I was pretty excited to try out the Yo-Zuri. This is our cheapest fluorocarbon line we're going to be testing today, and I wanted to see if it could hang with the higher priced fluorocarbon lines. Thanks to the thin diameter line, from the first cast all the way to the last cast, it was smooth like butter. It had no resistance going through the guides, and overall I was happy with how smooth and how far I could cast with this line. This will definitely give the other fluorocarbons a run for its money. If I had to rate this fluorocarbon line on the casting, I would give it an A-. I was very impressed with how smooth that casting was. The Berkley Vanish did not perform as well. The fluorocarbon line felt cheap, and on the first cast it felt rough. It also coiled up a lot and it wanted to rat's nest while reeling in. With all of the resistance while casting, it did not want to cast as far. All the way from the first cast to the last cast felt like a monofilament line. It did not go smoothly through the guides. I was pretty disappointed with how rough it felt while casting. Could be one of the worst performing fluorocarbons of the test. If I had to rate rate this, I would give it a D. It performed below average. I was intrigued to see how the P line would do. During our comparison, it was definitely average on everything. It didn't really stand out in any ways, but during casting, it was smooth. Not as smooth as the Yo-Zuri. It had great casting distance and no coiling or rat's nest. Overall, it was a really solid casting line. It went through the guides pretty smoothly, had nice line lay, and the casting distance was pretty good. If I had to rate this, I would give it a solid B, just right in the middle, average. Now we're starting to get into the more expensive fluorocarbon lines. The Sunline is our second most expensive fluorocarbon line. I'm hoping the performance is justified by the price, and after doing all of my casts, I can confidently say that it is very smooth casting, no resistance at all, and with it being one of the thinnest diameter lines, that definitely does help with the smooth casting and the increased distance. Also, it was very consistent in every single cast, and I'm excited to see if it can beat our most expensive fluorocarbon line. If I had to rank this, I would give it an A. Here we go, the Berkley Trilene, the most expensive fluorocarbon line we are testing today. And overall, with the thicker diameter line, with that increased weight, you can definitely feel the difference of it compared to the lighter lines. It does feel heavy while casting, but it's also very smooth. It definitely leaves the spool a lot easier. It also has great casting distance, and the line lay was very straight, but it definitely wasn't the smoothest of the day compared to others. But if I had to rate it, I would give it a solid B+. There was some qualities I wish it was a little bit better on. It wasn't consistent as the Sunline, and that thicker diameter line does feel good while casting. Now it's time to do the rat's nest test. We're going to be pushing each line to their limits with a full spool, and we're going to be casting a lightweight spinner, which will help promote any type of rat's nest. We will not help straighten or guide the line back onto the reel unless there's a rat's nest. We will untangle it and then continue the test. We will be using the same setup, a light synchro rod with a Daiwa 1000 reel. First up is the Yo-Zuri. The first cast, no rat's nest, which was great. Second cast, no rat's nest. Third cast, no rat's nest. Fourth cast, no rat's nest. And for the fifth and final cast, there were no rat's nest. The line was a little loose around the spool, which I expected. And with the Yo-Zuri not rat nesting, I would have to give this a solid A-. The Berkley Vanish is the one I'm most nervous about. So after the first cast, unfortunately, a small rat's nest formed. The second cast, the rat's nest went away, but the line was coiling and was loose on the reel. The third cast, no rat's nest. It kind of evened it out. But on the fourth cast, unfortunately, there was a big rat's nest and the line was coiling up. And then on the fifth and final cast, another rat's nest, and the fluorocarbon line was definitely not happy with the test. So I would have to give it a D-. Let's see how the P line can perform. So during the first cast, there was no rat's nest, which is great to hear, but unfortunately during the second cast, a small rat's nest formed and the line was starting to get loose around the spool. Luckily, the third cast, there was no rat's nest. Fourth cast, also no rat's nest. And for the fifth and final cast, luckily there was no rat's nest, but the line was loose around the spool. So if I had to rate this, I would definitely give it a solid C. It's staying average, but it's doing a good job while doing it. The Sunline, I have high hopes for. It performed very well during our casting test. So the first cast, there were no rat's nest, straight line lay, and very smooth. Second cast, no rat's nest. Third cast, no rat's nest. And fourth cast, no rat's nest. And then for the fifth and final cast, there were no rat's nest and it was still snug on the spool. If I had to grade this, I would give it an A. It performed exceptionally well. I don't think it could do any better than that. I am very excited to see how the Berkley Trilene performs. Will the thicker line be a pro or a con for this test? The first cast, there was no rat's nest, straight line lay, which is awesome, but unfortunately the line weight does throw off the balance of casting small spinners. Second cast, it started to coil up. Third cast, the smoothness was starting to go away and it was starting to coil up more. For the fourth cast, it started to feel rough while casting the small spinner, and it was definitely coiling up a lot more. For the fifth and final cast, it was coiling and the line was feeling loose on the reel. So I think I would have to give it a C, about average. It could have been a lot worse and it could have been a lot better. For the last test, we are going to be doing an abrasion test. This is going to be a significant torture test on these lines, and the goal is to see which line can survive 3 minutes. For this test, I went into my parents' backyard, which has a creek, and I set up a big wall of the most aggressive abrasive rocks I could find. I will anchor the line to the bottom of the creek, and then I will go to town for 3 minutes and see how much damage can occur. And I feel like this will be a really good abrasion test. Usually when you're fishing in lakes or creeks or rivers, there's always going to be rocks, and that's what can cause some major abrasions on your line. When I first got to my parents' backyard, there was no water in the creek. Suddenly they opened up the creek and water started to run through it, so I had to put on my waders to get in and out of the creek to press record on my camera, which made this test a lot more fun. During this test, the Yo-Zuri line snapped within 2 minutes. It did have very heavy abrasions where the snap happened. It definitely took a lot of damage. The line felt extremely rough, and if I had to rank this, I would definitely give it a D because it couldn't last the 3 minutes. During the testing, the Berkley Vanish survived the 3 minutes. Running my fingers through the line, I definitely felt abrasions, but surprisingly held up pretty well. I would give it a solid B. During the test, the P line survived the 3 minutes. The line did feel pretty rough throughout the whole line. There were some small abrasions here and there, but overall, pretty happy. It did last the 3 minutes and it held up pretty well, so I would give it a solid B+. During the test, the Sunline unfortunately snapped within 10 seconds left of the timer. Left a pretty clean snap at the line. The line had mild roughness to very small abrasions. If the line did not snap, I'd probably give it an A-, but since it did snap, I would have to give it a C+. During the test, the Berkley Trilene had a rough go around. During the first test, it snapped within 1 minute pretty easily, and I thought I did something wrong. So I gave it the benefit of the doubt and gave it a second try, and it snapped within another minute. Shocked that the thickness of the line couldn't hold up for 3 minutes. This was probably the biggest shock during the whole video, and if I had to rate this, I would have to give it a D-. Looking at the test results, we can see in the casting test, the Sunline came out on top with an A, with Yo-Zuri right behind it with an A-. Unfortunately, the Berkley Vanish performed the worst, getting a D. Next, the Rat's Nest test. Once again, the Sunline came out on top with an A, and right behind it was the Yo-Zuri with an A-. Unfortunately, the Berkley Vanish did not perform well at all, getting a D- on the Rat's Nest test. Next, for the abrasion test, which is the hardest test on fluorocarbon lines, we can see that the P line stood out among the rest, getting a B+. Now comparing the ones that did the worst for the abrasion test, the Yo-Zuri I feel like is justified to get that D rating because it's one of the thinnest diameter lines. But what shocked me the most during this test was the Berkley Trilene. It snapped twice on our test, and it really shocked me mostly because it's our thickest diameter line. It is 22% thicker than the thinnest line. So unfortunately, it got the lowest rating in the abrasion test, getting a D-. Now, if we average all the tests together to get a final grade, we see that the Yo-Zuri gets a B-, the Berkley Vanish gets a C-, the Sunline gets a solid B+, the Berkley Trilene gets an average C, and the P-line was above average, getting a B-. Now that we're done with the comparison and the test, if you're still wondering what fluorocarbon to pick, I'm going to give you some quick recommendations to hopefully help you find the right one. If you're looking for a high quality, high performing fluorocarbon line, check out the Sunline Super FC Sniper. This is one of the best fluorocarbon lines on the market right now. If you're looking for a more budget friendly fluorocarbon line, your best bet is going to be the Yo-Zuri TopKnot, and stood above the more expensive fluorocarbon lines, and this definitely has to be one of the best budget friendly fluorocarbon lines that you can buy. If you're looking for a good, solid, above average fluorocarbon line, the P-line fluorocarbon will definitely do that for you. During our test, it was very consistent and it never let us down during the test. Alright guys, this is going to be the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. This was my first time ever doing a video like this, and it was a lot of fun, but it was so much work. I definitely put the most time and effort in this video out of all of my videos. I wanted to pack as much information as I could, but hopefully you guys ended up liking this video. If you did, leave a thumbs up. That would mean the world to me. Also, give me any recommendations down in the the comments. And if you are interested in any of these fluorocarbon lines, I will leave a link down below. Or like I said, you can shop around at different stores and online stores to find the best prices near you. But like always, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and I will see you guys on the next episode. See ya.